Hey everyone, welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Gaming Daddy channel. So today I wanted to continue and pivot off my discussion about player power. And I appreciate those of you who commented on that video who had different opinions. That's pretty much what I intend to inspire. And we see things from different perspectives. Now, another thing too that I wanted to quickly address is if you disagree with me, kindly not take personal shots. The Division community is a community that's actually filled with adults. You're going to find people ranging from, 20 something years all the way through 60. And so I don't expect people taking personal shots at me, telling me that Ubisoft paid me to say my opinions. If you disagree with me, it's okay to disagree. I really don't mind. And as a full disclaimer, Ubisoft is not paying me anything. I've purposefully decided to have a full-time job while doing YouTube on the side so as not to put myself in a situation where there's even any sense of inappropriate doing, so I can share my opinions freely even in the face of other people talking negatively about the game, and I can go to bed with a good conscience. And if it was actually profitable to actually say positive things about the Division 2, then look at my views compared to the views of people who are negative. And you're going to see that there's actually an incentive for me to be much overly critical about this game because that seems like it's resounding more. I've said enough. Now let's move on to the subject matter of the video. If you look at the conversation, I failed in that video to put some context about my position on armor. And I thought that, as a community, we kind of understood where my position was, but I'll have to drag you a little bit back somewhere around the title update release for Warlords of New York. In that, season and in that period, I actually made a video talking about how the armor system in the game was busted and didn't make any sense because even as a tank player, which I used to play a lot of tank in this game, many of you know that I used to run and jump and shout from the mountains how tanks were my favorite builds. It eventually deterred me because that armor system did not hold up to the amount of sacrifice that I made in investing in my armor, and enemy NPCs could shred that armor very easily. And we even talked about ways in that same video on how to improve the armor system and make it scale based on the enemy NPCs that you were dealing with. I even suggested, some possible solutions in that video. And if you want to watch that video, I can provide you with a link so as to gain some context. And so I somehow assumed that many people kind of, understood this context before talking about the aspects of player power in the Division 2. And I've also seen some other people talk about the Division 1 making you feel very powerful. And I would say that perhaps that's actually the case all the way through the point where you get to legendary difficulty. Now, the Division 2 largely is very awkwardly scaled. And I think at legendary, that's where the game actually has the better tuning for what legendary has been, because we can reference the Division 1. And I'll reference the Division 1 and I'll put a challenge out there and say, go try to play a legendary mission. Take a few of your friends. If you can find anybody that wants to run a legendary in the Division 1 with you, go run a legendary in the Division 1 and compare it to how well you do in the Division 2 based on the so-called power that you say you feel from the Division 1. You're going to find out that the enemy NPCs, the level design, and a lot of different things are going to put you in an almost similar position in a way like the Division 2 does. The Division 2, yes, does it in a weird, over-the-top way, and I think that's because they're two different designers of both legendary systems, or maybe it's the same person, but if you think about it, you're going to feel, yes, slightly advantaged in the Division 1, but I don't think you're going to really outdo yourself in such a massive scale. And the reason I say this is because I've been looking back at some of the really crazy PvE players that we have in this community. Now, only a few of them have followed and entered the Division 2 with their speedrunning skills. And one of them is Clancy. I've referenced his video from back in the Division 1 days because his job is to run these very difficult missions solo. And so I've seen his solo attempt at District Union Arena, and he soloed the content in 22 minutes. In fact, he has two runs, one in 24 and one in 22 minutes. Now, I know teams where we've not been able to do it in that fast of the time frame, but where I pride myself in being a casual and not somebody who can play to his skill level. So comparing his run on Napalm Production Site, which is a legendary mode in the Division 1, and his run on District Union Arena, what I found was that there is basically I would say a 10-minute difference between both of them. That might be because District Union Arena is actually a longer mission than Napalm Production Site, or perhaps, as you say, the Division 2 makes you truly feel more powerful. But even when you watch the gameplay from both of his runs, he is very wise and meticulous to use a cover-based approach to be able to take on enemy NPCs. In fact, he was crazy enough to run District Union Arena with glass cannon on his chest piece. And this was title update 10. So I need to caveat that because some changes have been made to those builds and to the enemy NPCs since then and now. But it still goes to show that there is something about the cover-based approach and player skill and the knowledge of the game that every player has got to refine in order for them to do very well. And then even by the end of the Division 1, one thing that we need to acknowledge is the developers opening up the entire system to make us 100% maximum powerful was done towards the end of life of the game. Now, I always argued actually for the optimization station in the Division 2. In the past, I did argue that many times. I advocated for it and I wanted it to come to the game. But then I realized that, hey, even without the optimization station, we were somewhere around title update 5, title update 6. We were very strong and all the content was almost a walk in the park. And so at that point, it made no sense for us to be able to get everything at a whim like we did in the Division 1 at its end of life, because that may have, I can't say for sure, may have put the game in a place where we felt much more bored. And then it was a matter of we need something more challenging. And the developers will still go on and do it, things the same way by scaling enemy NPCs to hit very hard. And then, in a place where they can actually, take a lot more damage from us as well. We are doing good damage. That's a huge consensus in the community. It's much easier for us to take down enemy NPCs, but they flatten us out very fast. I don't know why that trade-off is where Massive seems to want to put things, but at the end of the day, it goes down to what I said in my past videos about armor scaling being weird, but then at the same time, there's still that aspect of the player using the systems that are available, aka cover. These things have come to the community in a weird way where I don't understand everybody else's approach. All I understand is my approach, and I'm sharing my opinions from my approach and the approach that I and even other players that I get to play with do use. And I've also seen a lot of different approaches, and I still don't understand if that's perhaps what other people are alluding to. Maybe the approach of somebody wanting to jump out in the open and just shoot everything. There is a cost to that in a cover-based shooter. And I think the Division 2 kind of overly emphasizes it, and they need to be able to come to the point where they make armor scaling very good. And what I mean by that is they need to add some level and some layer of you investing into your armor that makes it feel better. So if enemy NPCs are able to hit you at 1.3 million damage, then if you want to mitigate that damage, I feel like they need to come up with a system where your armor can get up to 5 million as you're walking into a mission. Now, yes, that might cost you a lot of damage and a lot of maybe skill attributes, but at least if you can walk in with 5 million, then you're able to take a little bit more damage by yourself. But it should come at a cost. And I've said this in other videos and talked about it in different iterations, but that doesn't take away from the power fantasy that I'm talking about in regard to how we can deal that much damage. You can walk into a mission of almost any difficulty with a turret drone and in sync, and you can melt everything. I don't see how that is not powerful enough. Are you supposed to do it outside of cover or in cover? Now, I think that's a whole different discussion that we have to have in the community. So it goes down and boils down to player preference and all the other things that, a player can do, or the way a player does play, to be able to leverage, the different systems in the game. I'm not saying everybody should go solo a mission, but I'm saying at least try and go, pick up your old Division game, test yourself out on the hardest difficulty, and compare how you're going to do in a higher level difficulty or in similar level difficulties in the Division 2. Where there's also kind of an issue as well is in the normal and the hard and the legendary difficulty. Now, there's something I've noticed with the armor scaling there as well. The enemy NPCs in those difficulties don't hit hard initially, but I've noticed that their damage scales the longer you stay out of cover. This was something I noticed at the beginning and the onset of the game. And I think the developers used that approach from when Terry Spires actually announced at E3 saying, watching agents playing the Division 2, every single one in cover. They were making an emphasis when they made and brought this game out of the launch that they wanted everybody to use the cover system. And so far, I think they've kept that approach as the central aspect of the game. Because in Division 1, you could literally run around in many missions that you played, and you necessarily didn't have to use cover except in some situation, except when it was really dire. The Division 2, on the other hand, emphasizes that cover-based mechanic regardless of the difficulty that you're playing. The problem is, it seems like it's in conflict with armor. But at the same time, the damage, like I've said again and again and again, that we as players are able to deal is actually very good in different aspects. And so we can debate the finer points of this, and I'm open to that. But at the same time, I feel like it doesn't really negate the fact that you can burst down an enemy NPC using specific build combinations, or even using, I think even whatever build you want to use in this case. The only problem is we need to find a way that makes people able to tank, but at a cost. Right now, there doesn't seem to really be a cost on how much you can tank. And I'll point this out in perhaps another video, and it will go to show kind of where the problem is and how this game is in dire need of something. But I'll reveal that in another discussion, so stay tuned and we can argue this point in the comment section. And I'll leave you right now, and thank you very much for watching. I appreciate you guys a lot. Peace.